Back when I was studying for the LSAT, I made every mistake in the book, every mistake you could imagine, and as a result, my practice test scores stayed low for far too long, hovering around the low 150s, test after test. My scores just would not go up. Ultimately, however, I did succeed, got my 175 on the LSAT, and I've been teaching the LSAT ever since, helping other students avoid those common traps that hold far too many test takers back. Today, I'm going to share with you the 3 biggest traps I personally made and that I see far too many students out there making as well, in the hopes that you can learn from my mistakes and avoid these common traps in your LSAT journey. Move on with life, rock the LSAT, get into law school. Not like me, I'm still doing this 15 plus years later, but I love it, no complaints. So the 3 biggest traps. Number 1 is the busyness trap. This is when you fall into the trap of taking test after test after test, measuring your results. You're happy, you're sad about them, then you move on to the next without taking the time to slow down and learn from your mistakes. I call this the obsessive practice exam narrative. The idea that through repetition alone, you're going to magically unlock the secrets of the LSAT, get that score boost, but in reality, it doesn't happen, and instead you just burn through valuable practice material. Instead, you've got to take the time to slow down and learn from your mistakes. Of course, there are 94 numbered exams in the old format with logic games. There are roughly 58 exams in the new format without logic games. You're going to burn through them faster than you'd think either way. And of course, you want to save some of these tests to be able to properly measure your results after you've already built the foundation. But you don't want to jump ahead to measuring until you've actually learned the basics of the test. So number 1 mistake is the busyness trap. The second big mistake is using explanations as a crutch. Of course, you can Google any LSAT question, find a forum or a message board or an explanation of some kind, but you're just seeing someone else's perfect way of solving the question. Will this method actually work under real-world LSAT timed conditions? Not necessarily. Is this explanation catered to your personal way of thinking about the question? Of course not. It couldn't possibly be, because this is an explanation someone else wrote without consulting you and without seeing how you personally think about the question. It's not customized to the tricks and traps that you personally are uniquely prone to falling for. So rather than using explanations as a crutch, I want you to actually consider thinking through the question for yourself, thinking through how you reason about the question. I've developed a framework to help walk you through this process called the Socratic review method, where we look at where your mistakes are stemming from. Are they in the stimulus? Are they in the question stem? Or are they in the answer choices? Were you misreading something in the argument? Or were you tempted by a super appealing wrong answer? Or were you discouraged by an unappealing right answer? And until you figure out which tricks and traps that you personally are uniquely prone to falling for, you may just end up making the same mistakes again and again and again. Of course, at LSAT Unplugged, we help walk you through this Socratic review method framework so that you will be able to avoid making the same mistakes again. You will learn from your mistakes. You'll come to see the LSAT from the test maker's point of view, which is necessary to propel you into the 170s and beyond. If you'd like to find out more, you could check out the links below the video to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. So again, that number 2 biggest mistake is using explanations as a crutch. In contrast, you want to adopt a review framework like the Socratic review method. Now, the 3rd biggest mistake is jumping into timed practice tests without building that foundation first. I alluded to this earlier in the context of taking test after test after test, but here I want to slow you down and talk through about the mistake of taking test after test after test. But in contrast, I want to focus with you here on taking the time to slow down and build that foundation first so that you understand the proper perspective from which to view each section and each question type. This is more important than ever because once the LSAT changes and has that second score logical reasoning section, LR will be the most important section of the exam by far, and there are roughly 15 different types of logical reasoning questions, and you got to make sure that you are crystal clear on the proper perspective from which to view each question, because of course, how can you solve the question if you don't know what the question is actually asking you? Meaning, you want to be clear on necessary assumption versus sufficient assumption questions. You want to be clear on must be true questions versus most strongly supported questions. And there are countless other distinctions that are unfamiliar to the average test taker, but can make all the difference when it comes down to getting past and eliminating that tempting wrong answer, and instead choosing the right answer, even if it might seem unappealing to the average unsuspecting test taker. Anyway, folks, that's all for now. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.